Hi Alex, thanks for joining us on Winning Ways at Asia Biz today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You've been very actively involved in the Singapore startup system, startup scenario. How do you read the entire startup ecosystem in Singapore?
A lot of people are asking me that as if the Singapore startup just begin, the startup scene just begin. The fact is that Singapore has been on the startup scene for quite a long while. Having that the DNA for us is that we are immigrant society. That starting up entrepreneurship has been kind of in us for a long time. The key challenge is that for the longest time we are not really in the tech startup space. So although we have a lot of R&D, that converting the R&D into the market was not there until the last 2 years when we start the acceleration strategy. So looking back as a Singapore startup scene is that I would say the last 2 years has been more exciting and we have changed the thing quite a fair bit. Yeah.
So when it comes to investing, what is IIPL's core strategy? What do you really look forward in startups when you identify and select them?
Okay, IIPL as a government investment organization, we always focus on two things. Number one is that we focus on the company as a VC, so we focus on the profitable company and invest in growth stage company. That's what we always do. Then the second core pillar that we're looking at is that it must have some relevance to Singapore economy, Singapore business, etc. So we are always looking at what is the relevance to Singapore, and it is rather broad in terms of definition. But when we are doing investment, then we realize that some of the issues that we face is that in Asia, growth stage company is not a lot. So being an investment company, when there's not a lot of investment, you will literally be in trouble. So that's the reason why we expand. We expand globally. We start looking globally at which are the companies that are possible to use Singapore as a springboard to access Asia, because that's where the relevance and helping the economy is. And yet we still don't have enough. So most recently we begin to start looking at that. If I cannot hunt, can I farm? So farming is a term that we use, that how we can manufacture more startup. And that is where the acceleration strategy came about. So we invest in accelerator, which typically we will not invest in the very early stage company because this is too small for us to handle. So we invest in accelerator, where accelerator handle the startup company, which will be able to watch them grow and help them along the way. The moment they are growth stage, we will go directly. So that is the kind of strategy that we are currently adopting. Accelerator and growth stage both work together and focusing on the growth stage company with the Singapore relevance.
There's a constant debate about whether a successful startup is all about an idea or whether it is about execution and the speed of scaling up. So how would you define it? What according to you is a key success factor for a startup?
Well, most of the people will look at something called idea. But the very interesting thing is that the word idea has not been clearly defined. What is an idea? And to most of the people is that idea is the solution that they don't want to sell. Now, a solution, if it's not able to solve a particular problem or the problem that is not real, then it's useless. And which is what the most common mistake that we see, and which is what we call product market fit. Most of the companies that we meet are not able to define that who is their customer very clearly and what is the problem they're trying to solve, and which is a fundamental question about product market fit. So to me, is that it's not about idea. Idea, unless you define very clearly, it's all about product market fit. But once you have defined the product market fit, to very clearly know that this is your customer and this is their problem, then execution becomes very important. The team who have the best so-called definition of product market fit, if they cannot execute it, there's still no revenue. So these two will always come together, but then one will come first before the second one. Product market fit first, and then execution come next.
There's a lot of talk about innovation. When you talk of startups, it's all about innovation. But to a large extent, we see that today innovation has come to signify something as apps. Most people take developing an app to be innovation. How do you see this? Is real innovation getting left behind in all this?
Okay, I will rewind it a little bit to ask again about what is the definition of innovation. Innovation, a lot of time people are confusing the definition of creativity and innovation. Creativity, basically you create something that does not exist before. So that is just start something. Innovation, on the other hand, is a lot narrower scope. Innovation basically talk about taking knowledge and convert into something that's valuable. So innovation always have the value. But the question will be the value, is that the value to who? The value to the innovator himself or the value to a market? So innovation is playing in that field that say innovation is about converting knowledge to value, and to us as investor, the value to the market. Now once you understand this one, then the whole scope becomes very clear. Whether it is apps or not apps or anything, it doesn't matter anymore. Because that when you talk about value, the value is to the customer. When the value is to the customer, customer must have a problem that you want you to solve, because he's willing to pay you to solve. How you go about solving it, it doesn't matter anymore. Which brings me back to the previous question about product market fit. Now you're talking about customer, which is a market, have a problem, and so long you have a product to solve it. Is it an app? Doesn't matter. Is it a so-called promoter wearing a sandwich board walking outside? It doesn't matter anymore. Could be a flyer, it doesn't matter anymore. So long it is something that solves this problem. Now, it is app is because creating an app is actually much easier nowadays. An app is very convenient with the mobile penetration. We definitely will see a lot of app because this is one of the best and convenient platform to do it. But app itself is just a format. Underlying, we still talk about product market fit. Underlying, we still talk about whether you are solving a problem for a particular group of customers, which is exactly why we are trying to solve this as an investor. We're trying to solve this issue because we see a lot of companies creating solutions looking for a problem. So how we solve about it is that we create accelerator, and accelerator within that 3 months is spending at least 1 month to figure out who is your customer and what is his problem. And at the end of these 3 months, they will have very, very clearly defined the business model and have a product and a good pitch. So that is how we go about solving it.
As somebody who's been involved with the startup sector for such a long time, what are the technologies on the horizon that really excite you? I mean, what do you think probably is going to be a game changer in the near future?
There are two technology that I've been playing and constantly playing. One is 3D printer. 3D printer is current stage is that we really look at it, there's a hell lot of problem, and nobody can figure out what is the market down there. But the technology will change. The technology will change in such a way that 3D printer right now is that you're talking about 2D, you just layer them together, which also means that structurally they are not strong. Number one, material you can use is limited, literally just plastic, most of plastic. Now, in the future, if we're able to grow instead of print, then structurally the thing will be different and the speed will be much faster. And the material you can use is basically any kind of material. That will change the digital manufacturing. That will change a lot of things, how we produce things. Okay? 3D printer we are talking about, or you go to the dentist down there, you just print your denture out. This is not, we can't do it yet. But I would believe that in the next 5 years, we will reach that stage of being able to really print something that is workable and usable down there. So that's one area. The second area that we need to watch is artificial intelligence, AI. AI, okay, my background is study cognitive psychology, so I understand about AI, that AI a very interesting thing is that it will be able to help us to solve a lot of mundane things. Able to help us to analyze a large pool of data and able to help us to ask pertinent questions. And these are the things that currently is still very much human and it's very intensive, and we spend a lot of time doing it, which artificial intelligence in the next few years should be able to help us to take some of the load out. Okay? And that immediately open up a lot of opportunity, because that ultimately for a good successful business it's about finding problem. Artificial intelligence help us find the problem, and that is very important. So these are the two technology I'm constantly watching.
Another statement that keeps making rounds is about everything that needs to be invented has been invented. How do you react to a statement like this?
Short answer is that yes, it is true. Anything that needs to be invented anyway. But the long question you always look at it is that even if something is invented, can it be better? If it's 10 times better, take it upscale, then there's worthwhile business to be invested in. Like for example, car. Car is being invented, people have been driving around. It's serving different needs. What about in the future? How about having an autonomous vehicle? Autonomous vehicle is not about not driving, it's actually about efficiency of it. Why efficient? When the car can talk to each other, you literally can have the threading. That means that one car move the other car and you will not bump into each other. And the whole traffic can be very, very smooth. And because of the communication of the car, you can slow down so that you don't have to stop. And that changed a lot of things. In most of the time in the highway, that is what our experience. We are moving forward and stop, moving forward and stop. But if all of us are moving at a constant speed, the whole thing can be very efficient if the car is able to communicate with each other. So autonomous vehicle having artificial intelligence, that is something that can change the game, right? So even whatever is invented before, yes, there's always opportunity to make it better. But there's another one very interesting thing as I want to point out is that a lot of time people have a problem. For example, Deck 8. Most recently I saw it on Indiegogo, where one of the product that came up have over $1 million raise, oversubscribed for I think 600% times. So when you start looking at this one, you say, yeah, it's a back problem. A lot of people have back problem. The solutions are not good enough. So there are a lot of solutions, but any new solution that come up, you still have a market. When there is a market, it's something that's viable. So even there's something being even invented before, you still have a market for a new one. So as a business, as an investor, we're constantly looking for all these things. And I'm quite sure that the next disruption will happen in Singapore, probably in the area of education, if not in the content marketing. These are the places that Singaporeans are good at doing.
Talking of disruption, I mean, banking seems to be a sector which has not, I mean, it's been there a little bit of disruption, but not to the extent that people have expected or are probably looking forward to.
You have to look at two sides of it, the disruptor and the incumbent. Incumbent as a bank, they're pretty strong. So they will constantly be watching the disruptor, and if the disruptor is really working to disrupt them, they just acquire them. It's pretty easy to solve. Is it going to solve the long-term problem? The answer is not. But you have to look at the market situation, overall environment that is very different. Take for example that we can look at things such as payment. Payment is the most common thing happen in the financial technology, fintech right now. But in the Europe and in the United States, what is the challenge? The challenge is very minimal because it's one common currency. Europe in euro and US in US dollar. So when you start looking at the two of them and say, hey, you know, there are very, very little differential down there. So which is the reason why when you start looking at payment and all these things, it doesn't really hit everything. The incremental improvement is very little. That's one. While in Asia, now you're talking about Asia is more than 20 countries out there. Payment, there's no common currency. Although we try to use US or Euro or even Renminbi as a common currency, but there's always a conversion from local into that currency. But have all this forex, number one, and then the payment. All of a sudden, the spread become wide. And that is an opportunity to be able to disrupt. And that is why the market situation is very, very different. So when you start looking at financial technology, payment, although people say it's a low-lying fruit, margin is very thin, but in Asia, it's very doable. And that changed the game altogether. But the key challenge out is always that how many people really understand that? It's when the startup, that's when we want to get them into acceleration and say, with the mentor will be able to help them and say, look, this is where the opportunity. Because with that kind of knowledge, then you'll be able to see that this is the opportunity. That is why acceleration is what we are currently doing, and we are pushing and trying to get them up as fast as possible.
Lastly, I mean, what is your advice to all those starry-eyed youngsters who are looking to create the next big thing?
Well, next big thing is always what we like. When you're able to solve a big problem, the problem is big enough, and of course have to quantify about the definition again. When we say big, that means that this is something that everybody must agree that it is big, and it is relevant, and it is something that everybody is eyeing on it. Because sometimes people may look at it big, it's not really a big problem, right? So once the thing is defined, it is a lot easier to focus your energy. Then the next stage they're looking at is that don't stay inside your head or inside your room. Real business is always outside. You always need to go outside. Talk to the customer. Who are the people that you think that they're going to buy your thing? That is what we do in the acceleration. Again, we push them out to the door and say, look, go talk to the customer. Because a lot of time product market fit doesn't work is because that they think that this is a problem. It happened all inside down here, and it's not validated. Granted that young people have less contact, so the best thing to do is to immerse in the environment and talk to people. And the less people they talk to, the more chance they fail. So the more people they talk to, the better chance of them finding what is that problem and solve it. And that problem can be really huge. Right?
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for your-
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.